Hello and welcome to Digital Anthropos. Today we are talking about one more cognitive bias, and we'll get into the availability heuristic. People overestimate the importance of information that is available to them. A person might argue that smoking is not unhealthy because they know someone who lived to 100 and smoked 3 packs a day. So what's wrong about this bias?
Well, shouldn't smoke cigarettes, right?
Yeah, that's true.
But I think it relates to the information bubbles that we live in today. We know this from political elections recently, but it's been prevailing fact in software for many years, like framework specific bubbles that we live in. We think everything can be done with this framework and everything should be done with this framework, whereas maybe not.
And we see that are a lot of vendors that do this, and they in a way profit from having these bubbles or creating these bubbles. And not to give names, but we have Microsoft or Amazon who do that often, right? And they tend to create this whole environment for us that we don't need to look outside the bubble that we are in.
Yeah, everything you need to build software is in there and should be done with that. Yeah, definitely.
But at least that's kind of an illusion, right?
Yeah, it's an illusion, which is even helped by the way that our search engines work. If I search a lot of Amazon, then I will be given results on Amazon. And so it keeps me in this bubble very efficiently. But of course, there are many dangers with this, right?
Of course, yeah. So we discussed before, and we found 4 dangers, and let's take them one by one. First of all, we said that there's the danger of discovering late things that you need.
Yeah, completely.
So the fact that even if you have some you need some tool or you need some technology, if you are only in your bubble, you might not know that you could use something outside, and you start maybe recreating it or just doing it in a very inefficient way. And I observe this quite often when you have people not knowing about unit testing or test-driven development or a testing strategy, things that are kind of outside these bubbles that are created by these types of vendors.
Yeah, well, yeah, this happens a lot, and but also technology-wise. So even the framework stacks that we had before were very closed, and it took some time even to realize that there was this concept of routing, there was this concept of templating, there was this concept of how you access the database, if you want to use an ORM, or if you want to use an active record, or if you whatever.
So then we get to the second danger, that it makes abstractions a lot more difficult.
Yeah, and maybe we should name all the difficulties just first, because before we went into the detail of each one. So we have this make abstraction difficult, seal you off from other people in other technology stacks, which you could have interesting conversations with, and you had this idea of different environments.
Yes, that you reinvent the same concepts in different environments, and we will get into that as well.
Okay, so let's go back to making abstraction difficult. One example of this I see is messaging. So a lot of teams are using RabbitMQ, but very few of us have the concept of what is the fundamental service that it's delivering. So to me, one of the fundamental services is guaranteed one-time delivery. But if I think in terms of RabbitMQ, then I cannot really ask myself the question, do I need one-time delivery or at least once delivery? which is quite different.
It's quite different and can become very philosophical, right? If you go a bit deeper into it.
Yeah.
But it's helpful to talk about abstractions, and I guess at one moment in our career we can start understanding well enough the things around us that we can abstract them, and the sooner we do that, the better.
Yeah.
At least that's my experience.
Yeah, and it's very treacherous because in the beginning of our career, we have so much to learn from this web framework, or we have so much to learn from this Microsoft Azure and good practices from there. We can learn most concepts from them, even though they're hidden behind technology names. But at one moment, we need to break out of that. But we're lured into thinking that everything is there. So it's quite natural to end up there.
Yeah, but then we need to get out of this sealing off idea, right? To look out of our environment that we are comfortable in at one moment, probably.
Yeah.
And of course we can do this consciously, like I want to learn something new, but it can also happen in the career that you change to the framework or the job or the environment, and then you have something else and you're forced into it.
Yeah.
I think either way is good.
Yeah, it's definitely very good. Like I said about discovering about object-oriented programming when I was doing functional programming. That's really brilliant. So I guess the way we can hinder this is to specifically go to other bubbles and see what's there. That's a very efficient way of doing it.
And you were saying that it really helped you with OOP to understand it better, just because you understood better the functional programming approach.
Yeah, through the differences, the concept became clearer.
Yeah, and I guess this happens with anything, with a cloud provider. If you get very well Azure, maybe, then if you look a bit at what happens in Amazon, you'll understand better what are the abstractions there and what you could improve. And sometimes even ask, okay, you might want to keep up with Azure, but you might ask for new features and push the vendor to give you something that you need.
Yeah.
And then we have this thing about reinventing the same concepts in different environments. I had this idea that you have this observation, in fact, that you have a lot of concepts that are common in user experience, in product development, and they come always and from software development, and they have totally different names, totally different concepts, named concepts, but in theory, in the core, they mean the same thing. And that was very interesting, because these three environments are extremely different. One comes from business, the other comes from graphical design, and the other ones come from software. But ideally, they need the same thing. And they reinvented the same concepts, and now it's even difficult for them to talk about abstractions, because every bubble talks about their own abstractions. So now you maybe need to create an umbrella of abstractions on top of that, and that doesn't happen now.
No, like one example is, and maybe you can give an example of a common tool. I'm thinking of version control, which is basically in every world. Do you have other good examples of tools that are common?
Well, an IDE maybe.
Yeah.
It's something everybody has nowadays, or a browser. It's even more common, right? Yeah. So also we can get out of our bubbles by looking outside. We talked a bit about that, and we have all these communities that don't look just at one framework, and we can talk about the software craft community, the domain-driven design community, the testing community, and so on, and they are very focused on learning from each other. Is this helpful for us to get into one of these communities?
Yeah, it's very helpful because those two communities, they are definitely not fixed on a technology stack. So that's terrific. But we're still not done, right? Because every community is a bubble in itself.
Yeah, so a lot of people say about the software craft community that it's a bubble because they work in this environment where everybody learns and wants to learn, but I really had a few examples of people who were going to let's say these environments where they aren't used to doing that, and then they were quite frustrated that they don't like it. So it's obviously a difference in culture and way of understanding the world.
Yeah, so maybe we need to mix it with information from another bubble. Definitely one of the major ways of fighting these dangers is to see many bubbles, right? And more specifically, I think it's more important as our career advances, as years go by, we can gain more and more from going to other bubbles, because there's less and less knowledge to gain from our current bubble.
So first of all, understand that we live in a bubble or in more bubbles, and try to get into as many as possible.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much for recording this with me, and we'll see you next with another cognitive bias.
Yeah, thank you, Adrian. That was great.